Hi there and welcome back to another PSD Tuts spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele, and today's tutorial I'm going to take you through Alvaro's It's Time to Create a Neo-Constructivist poster with Photoshop. And this is the final image that we're going to be creating. It says so little time, and we've got a chap looking at his watch here, and a little bit of torn paper at the bottom, and then a little message saying so much to do. So do check out this tutorial over on the site if you're looking at this on Blip. And these are all the files that we're going to be using. This one, Businessman, all from the stock exchange, some wrinkled paper, some grunge kind of textured paper, and then a newspaper that's been folded over, and finally some old paper that's going to be used for that little tag down at the bottom that says so much to do. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to be creating. This is what I created in after following the tutorial. It's pretty close. So all you need to do is open up a new file that is 1200 pixels by 1600 pixels with a resolution of 72 RGB, and click on OK. And then I'm just going to resize this and zoom out just a touch. Also going to get this one out of the way. Okay, so once you've got your page set up, the first thing you're going to do is we're going to add a new layer. We're going to go to Layer, New Fill Layer, and Gradient. And we're going to set that to our first color is going to be set as 7D 0000. And let's make sure we get the opacity right up on this second color. And we're going to set that to 48000. Click on OK. And then we're going to change the angle from 90 degrees down to about anywhere between 17 and 20 degrees. And then just click on OK. And it kind of gives us this top corner a little bit darker than the bottom left, which, you know, is pretty cool. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a texture, our first texture. So I'm just going to grab that texture now. And that's this crumpled up bit of paper that's been flattened out again. And then on that layer I'm going to click V and just drag that straight onto our canvas. And then get that out of the way. And just position that anywhere you want on the canvas. Set that to linear burn. And then you can see we get this really cool, what looks like now red crumpled paper. So what we're going to do is select the textured layer, and we're going to do a layer mask, and it's going to hide all. So layer mask, hide all, and then we're going to use a gradient tool to bring out some of this. So head over to the gradient tool, and we're going to set it to black to white, and then we're going to change the top to be a reflective setting, which is this one here, second from the end. So I'm going to click on that. And what that's going to do is, it's going to, if I just drag that out down here, it's going to create a little line like so with the blurring on either side. But we don't want it just there. Okay, that's pretty good. And then we're going to grab a brush, and nice big brush. Bring the softness down. Whoops. And just going to brush in here. Just add a little bit more. Let's reduce the opacity down to about 50. Same with the flow. That's better. We're just going to touch up this top area. And come down a bit. That looks pretty good. Alright, then we're going to adjust the levels on this layer. So Command L on your keyboard or Control L on a PC. And we're going to set this to 0.75. Okay, that's our background for now. We're going to come back to this and just play around with it a little bit later on towards the end. Next thing we need to do is grab the image of the man looking at his watch, and we're going to bring that in. So spend a little time cutting him out, and then grab the move tool, and we're going to grab that and just drop him straight in. Transform it. Let's get him right down. It's about there. And we're going to transform him again. And this time what we're going to do is we're just going to play around with the perspective to make it look like we're looking down on him. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab, oops, not that edge there. There we go. We're just going to bring these down or out. Just playing around with it, getting the perspective that we need. Let's bring this across and hit enter. And now it looks like we're kind of looking down onto his legs. Or onto his head, sorry, and then down through to his legs. And that looks pretty good. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to burn some of the midtones on this right hand side. So there we go. Make sure you got burn tool selected, midtones, exposure set to about 50%, and then just on this right hand side we're just going to darken all the way along. Like so, the inside leg a bit. Because I'm using my my bamboo tablet, sometimes when I press it does a thin line rather than the actual full width of the brush. So just making sure, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we're going to duplicate our man layer. Let's just quickly label that. Duplicate that layer, and then we're going to go to filter. We're going to go to other and high pass, and set that radius to about 10 pixels. Click on OK, and then set that layer to overlay, and then merge those two layers together. Command E on the keyboard. Okay, so now we've brought out the detail in our man layer. I'm just going to darken this left hand here. It's a little bit light. And that thumb area, that looks much better. Unfortunately, I've got a tiny little bit of haloing going on over here. My selection wasn't perfect, but if you spend a bit more time with that, you'll be able to cut that out using the channels method or using the pen tool. Okay, so we're going to duplicate our man layer to create a shadow layer now. So I'm going to do that, bring it underneath that layer. V on the keyboard, let's move it out to the right a little bit, just so we can see what we're doing. And then hit Command T on the keyboard. And then we're going to move this layer right across to here. And just move that down, like so. And then let's move that back into place. There we go. And then we're going to just play around with Command U on the keyboard, the hue and saturation, and let's just bring the lightness all the way down to -100. Click on OK, and there we've got the start of our shadow layer. So select it, go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, set the Gaussian blur to 5 pixels, and click on OK. We're going to duplicate that layer. We're going to make this duplicate bigger, so Command T. And then move it back into into place. And then once you've done that, reduce the opacity down to 25%. And then reduce the original shadow down to about 75%. And then merge both of those layers. And that is going to be our shadow layer. Now, if you just look down at the bottom of the shoe down here, we've got a little bit of the shadow coming out of the toe area from where we made it bigger. So I'm just going to erase that with my eraser tool. Okay, it looks pretty good. And then let's just zoom out. Okay, it's looking good. Right, next thing that we need to do is we're going to start adding our text and big Arial black text, and we're going to type out the word time. So let's head over to text. Let's click down here. I'm going to have it set to Arial black. About 300 pixels. And capitals. Time. Now we need to make sure we select a nice yellowy color for this. So let's do E8. BBOO. Okay. And we're going to move this below our shadow layer, like so. And then let's just move it down behind our guy. And then if we double click on that layer, head up to our warp text, we're going to select arc, 0 for the bend, -60 for horizontal distortion, and vertical distortion will stay at 0, and click on OK. And then we're going to go Command T. We're going to bring this left hand side down, get it nice and big, and then Command click, and we're going to bring this back up like so. I'm just going to bring down a guide to about there, so that when I bring this up, pretty much sticks to that guide like so, and then we hit enter. Okay, it looks pretty good. So once you've done that, we're going to add a little layer style to that. So double click on the layer. We're going to add a drop shadow and a gradient overlay. So let's start with the gradient overlay. It needs to be set to normal. 100 is fine, and let's set our first color to 8D 6009, and the second color is going to be 522300. Click on OK. Make sure it's on linear, and we're going to change the angle to 36 degrees and 100% for the scaling. And then let's come back to the drop shadow. Again, multiply black 75%, angle of 120. The only thing we're going to change here is the spread to 8 and 117 for our size, and then click on OK. And there we go, we've just darkened that a little bit. Next thing to do is we're going to add the second bit of text, which is so little, and we're going to copy the layer style onto that and just change the color ever so slightly. So let's select text tool again. Let's write down here, and we're just writing so little. You might want to just reduce the size of this down by 100 points. So let's have it set to 200. Oops. And then let's just move that up here. Because we've got this horizontal ruling here, we can, ensure that we're on the right lines in lining this all up. So back onto that so little, back to the arc tool. Again, 0. This time we're going to do -50. And let's place that there. And again, just play around with positioning of this. Hit return. Take that off. We need a little bit of a gap here, but we don't want that gap to be too big on the end. So again, just bring that down just a touch. Okay, it looks pretty good. Right click on your time layer and copy your layer style, and then right click on our other layer and paste that layer style. Double click in there, go into the gradient overlay, and we're just going to change these colors. The first color is going to be 3A 0303, and our second color 2A 0000. And click on OK and OK. So it's a lot darker, that lateral layer color, but it looks pretty good. So next thing that we need to do is we're going to group these two. And let's call that text. And just to finish off our text, we're going to create that lovely little reflective text underneath it. So right click on your group, and we're going to convert that to a smart object. Duplicate the smart object, transform it and flip it vertically. Bring that right down. And then hold Command on the keyboard, and we're just going to bring that up and nudge it down again. Okay, and then hit enter. And then we're going to do a layer mask on that new layer, and we're going to do reveal all. Is that right? Yeah. Do reveal all, and then we're going to paint in with a black brush, and we're going to get rid of like so. Now you could have done a gradient tool there, but I tend to just use the brush, kind of, gets exactly the same effect. And you can see, so we've still got this little white line down here. So I'm going to grab that layer and just nudge it ever so slightly and go back in, but it looks pretty good. Yeah, and it's a nice quick, excuse me, easy way just to get a bit of reflection there. I'm going to grab those two layers, stick them into a group again, and call that group text. Right, next thing that we're going to work on is another bit of texture. It is this grungy paper. So V on the keyboard and drag that straight in. And we want to resize this so that it fits right onto the page. Okay, and then hit enter. Now we're going to stick this above all the other layers. We're going to Command U, play around with the saturation, bring that right down to -100, and then we're going to set that to overlay, and then we're going to lock it. So overlay in our blending modes, and then we're going to click on this little crosshair of arrows here, just so we lock that layer and don't really mess around with it any more than we have to. Now, our man doesn't quite look right. The color of him doesn't really blend in with the rest of the image. So duplicate your man layer. And then we're going to move that below the original man. We're going to select our original layer. We're going to go to filter, layer, new layer adjustment, and photo filter. And we're going to leave that on warming filter 85 with a density of 72. And click on OK. Now let's apply that to the whole image. We need to just apply it to our man, so hold down Alt and just click in between those layers, and it makes sure it only applies it to our man layer. So that's called a clipping mask, and once you've created your clipping mask, we're going to select the copy of our man underneath and Command U and bring the lightness all the way down to -100. And then we're going to go to filter, blur, motion blur, and let's have that set to about 20 degrees. That looks pretty good. 800 pixels, and click on OK. Duplicate this another 2 times, so you get that real heavy blur there. Grab those 3, Command D or Control E, and let's merge them together. And then let's move them all above the actual color correction here. Now, using the eraser with a nice soft brush, we're just going to get rid of this blur from our face and our body here. Let's bring that down. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is play around with the mask texture at the bottom. So down here, let's bring that right down, and we're going to look at this area on our feet down here. So we're going to click on the mask, change to white, nice big brush, and we're going to bring out some of the texture. So just a few little spots. On our layer there. Let's bring up the opacity. Okay, so we're just doing that around the feet, and then we're going to merge those together. Okay, I've just noticed the colour is on white. Make sure your colour's on black. And we're going to bring out this texture from under the feet. So a few little spots. There we go. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to grab these 2 layers, stick them into a group, duplicate our group, and then merge it down. And I'm just going to turn off this layer here in case we ever want to come back to it. So once you've done that, we're going to use the lasso tool now, and we're going to cut away from our actual image here. So head up to the lasso, and we're just going to draw this out. Nice broken uneven line straight across. Like so. Now once you've done that, we're going to go to a layer mask and reveal all. And then we're going to fill our selection with black. Like so. Then we need to grab our newspapers, or our newspaper, and we're going to stick this on, and then we're going to duplicate it twice. So let's just minimize that back down. And this is going to go under our background layer. Oops. What we need to do before we do that is deselect, and the whole newspaper's underneath there. So position this so that you get, I don't know, some corners of pages and stuff like that, and a bit of the fold. I'm going to duplicate that and just bring it down, maybe rotate it around a bit. And then hit enter. Okay, so once you've got the paper on there, we're going to grab our burn tool, and we're just going to darken some of these areas on our newspaper. So midtones 50%. Let's get some of those edges, and then change to the dodge tool. And just go back and forth between the two, highlighting areas and darkening areas. Make sure you merge those two layers together, Command E, and just come in between along the lines of the tears. Lots of nice textures in there. Just really bring out that paper. Okay, then we're going to add a layer above that, and that's going to be an adjustment layer. So layer, new adjustment layer, and again back to photo filter, but this time we're going to use a color. So select color, and then we're going to be using E4 AD04, and set that to 66. And again, make sure that's clipping our layer here, just in case we ever move that. We don't want to apply it to anything else other than our magazine layers below. Okay, next thing that we need to do is move on to the next bit, and that's to just fix this edge up along our tear. So if we come up to our layer mask and we alt click on that area, grab the magic wand tool, select our black area, come back to our background, head up to selection, modify and expand it by 6 pixels, click on OK, and then Command U brings up hue and saturation down to -100, and lightness we're going to set to 20, and then click on OK. Right, now we're going to grab the dodge tool and an irregular brush, so something a little bit scattery. Something like that. And then just randomly just going to hit up some of these corners. Maybe just increase the size of the brush a bit. And let's have a look at what that's doing. So you can see it's just, well, hopefully you can see, it's just breaking down these edges. So let's go back to doing a bit more of that. Spacebar, you can move around the canvas. Okay, Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer above our newspaper photo filter, and we're going to call this shadows. So create a new layer. Let's call that shadow. And let's just deselect. And then we're going to grab a big black brush. And we're going to set that to about 200 pixels. And hardness set to 0. Opacity we're going to set to 50. And flow to 50 as well. And then just going to paint in a little bit of shadow under here. Oops, a little bit too much. Let's just zoom out. Go back to our brush, be on the keyboard, and just catch the edge. Like so. So now we need to grab our paper. V on the keyboard after you've cut that out, drag that straight in, minimize that out of the way, and then bring it all the way to the top of the whole stack. Command T, we're going to scale that right down. And just stick that like so. Okay, now we're going to mask out this area down the bottom. And we come down to our background layer, command click to get our selection. With the lasso tool selected, hold down Alt, and we're just going to come straight across the middle and then all the way over and back down. And that's going to add that area there. Command Shift I is going to invert your selection. We're still on this paper layer, and just hit the mask, and you can see it masks out that area down the bottom. And I'm just going to call this layer paper. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of work on this paper layer now. We're going to add some shadows, we're going to darken it a little bit, and then finally we're going to write our message on there. So let's start by adding a shadow, so new layer, let's call this shadow, and again, big soft brush, and black, keep opacity and flow to the same settings as before, just lightly, maybe that's a little bit too much, bring the opacity down a bit more, and just play around with. Bit of shadow like so, and then I'm going to create a layer underneath it. And this is going to be our drop shadow, so I'm going to increase the opacity a bit. And just draw that in. And then I'm going to group both of those, all three of those, Command G. And I'm going to call that paper. Okay, so we're on to the last little bit now. So we're going to select our paper, and we're going to go Command U and turn the saturation down to -25. Click on OK. And then we're going to finally move that all the way down to just above that layer, like so. And then finally we're going to add a little bit of writing over here across our tag. So let's increase the opacity to 100% and flow to 100%. We want it to be 100%, and we want a tiny little brush now. So in here, I'm going to create a new layer and bring it right down, about 5 or 6 pixels, and we're just going to write, I'm using a bamboo tool, so no, not happy with that. So let's just decrease the size of this M. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit too. And then back to the brush tool. Again, just playing around different sizes of brush. Okay, and so much, and then to do down at the bottom. Some bigger brushes. Okay, and let's zoom out and have a look. And that's it, looks pretty good. So that's the end of our tutorial. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through Alvaro's It's Time to Create a Neo-Constructive Poster with Photoshop. And hopefully you've got something that looks pretty similar to this. And I hope you've enjoyed that quick little poster tutorial. Thanks very much for watching, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon.